The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
Welcome from the General Assembly in the City of Richmond. I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Cox Communications. Please welcome our guest today from Northern Virginia, Fairfax County, Mark Keam. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Kory, good to see you.
Great to be here.
Scott Surovell, good to see you.
Great to be back, Woody.
A lot of action going on. I think you've got about a month left in this 45-day short session, but I know that electronic textbooks is a big issue for you.
Yeah, Delegate Kory and I just came from a hearing about 15 minutes ago where we heard our bill. Delegate Kory and I actually represent very similar districts.
Yes.
I represent a very diverse part of Fairfax County. It's about 29% foreign-born population. It's got about a 48% average free reduced lunch population. And the county has rolled out this electronic textbook program, which is, it's really more online learning systems where you have to have a computer to do your homework and study. And I have a lot of constituents that don't have computers and don't have broadband, and they're not able to access the same tools as the other kids are in my district, and I didn't think it was fair, so I put in a bill to deal with it. To me, it's like asking somebody to pay for a trumpet if they want to be in band, or pay for a football helmet if they want to play football. I don't think public schools should have tools that are available to kids that are dependent on your family's income or wealth in order to use, and so we just came from that hearing.
So
yes.
It's a fairness and equity issue.
It is. It totally is. And it's about distribution of resources. It's also about proper planning on the part of local officials. And unfortunately, that hasn't taken place. And one of the problems has been that there has not been consistent collection of data about connectivity and broadband distribution. And that is another issue that we were talking about. The state needs to collect that data from school systems so that we can plan our educational policies appropriately. You can't have virtual schools running down the highway really, really fast when half of our population can't access that. Sure. My district is also very, very diverse, many different languages. I forget, 78 languages in the middle school nearest my house.
78.
Yeah,
wow.
Isn't that, but they don't all speak. They don't all speak at once. But it is a real problem. I know it's a real problem in terms of electronic textbooks. Otherwise, it's not any kind of problem at all. And my children have benefited greatly from the diversity of my community. But it's also that diversity has also been a problem in voting.
Sure.
And I saw a lot of distressing situations in my district on election day, especially having to do with people for whom English is not their first language, being in line a very long time because there either weren't the materials in their language that would help them understand what was on the ballot, or there was no one who could interpret, or the one person who was in charge of helping people for whom English was not their first language was supposed to deal with about 15 different languages. So I have a piece of legislation in that will request, not mandate, electoral boards to note the language communities located within different areas. It may not be a huge percentage of the total population according to the census, but some districts have one large language group residing within their precincts, and the electoral board should note that, and then they should have the information available to the citizens in their own language. And I also am encouraging electoral boards to allow interpreters to come with the voters. I'm sure you know that in the DMV, you can bring your interpreter.
Department of Motor Vehicles.
Department of Motor Vehicles.
Yes.
You can bring your interpreter to sit next to you while you take the driving exam. And I think voting is a lot more important.
Just as important, if not much more so. And I know that you have a host of issues dealing with your constituency, Delegate Keam, not the least of which is Tyson's Corner and a tax related to that Please tell us about that.
Sure, and thanks again for your time and for the public service that you're doing for all of us. I have about 15 bills in this session, which is the limit that we have in the short sessions. And the issues that I'm presenting this year range from across the board, from tax issues to transportation, education, and all the various strong needs. But one of my highest priorities in this session deals with Tyson's corner area and the development and the tax in particular. And as my colleagues here were alluding to, Fairfax County, we're blessed in some ways that we have such diversity and so many great resources, but we're also a county that's not homogenous. I mean, if people look at Tyson's in particular in Fairfax County and just assume that we're all doing well, fairly wealthy compared to other parts of the Commonwealth, but we're not. We have a lot of poverty. We have a lot of areas that where minorities and others are struggling. And in my area, in the Tyson's area, even though we see the big buildings and we see the skyscrapers and the Fortune 500s, the reality is we have a lot of senior citizens who are on fixed income, who lived there, moved there many years ago when it was just a farm, and now they're living in a town that's growing around them. And I welcome the development. I like the idea that we're going to have a downtown that's going to be comparable to some of the bigger cities that we have in the country. But the problem is somebody has to pay for all that development. And what the County Board of Supervisors did recently is to decide that the county will assess a new tax to pay for the transportation infrastructure for Tyson's development that'll happen over the next generation. And on the surface, I support the idea of asking those who are going to be using the places to pay for it. But the unfairness, and the reason why I'm bringing a bill in the General Assembly, is the county had to, unfortunately, assess a new tax for both commercial buildings, which are the Fortune 500s and the hotels and all the shopping centers, as well as that senior citizen who's retired and living on a fixed income. And so for a woman who's in her late 70s, who's lived there for 40 years, she's already paid for her kids to go to school. She's already paid for the infrastructure, and now she's being asked to pay another few $100s a month or a year to pay for a new sidewalk or a new parking lot or a new off-ramp. And I just didn't think that was fair. So we're looking for a fix in the General Assembly to see if we can give some authority for the localities to make those decisions, to make some fairness for the county residents there as well.
Right. Delegate Surovell, tell us a little bit about the Route 1 corridor. What's happening there, if anything, in terms of the betterment of that entire area?
Well, the Route 1 part of Fairfax County it's not a place that's frequented by many people outside of the area, outside of the people who live there. And from my point of view, it's pretty much my #1 priority is trying to bring some improvement to the corridor. Right now, it's a traffic clogged mess. The county hadn't widened Route 1 since I think 1970, and there's probably about 75 to 100,000 more people living around it, south of it in Lorton, where the prison used to be, in the landfill, and in Prince William County, trying to get through it. And so traffic is awful. Senator Poehler and I have been working, and Senator Eben as well, with the Department of Transportation to secure about $2 million to complete the first study that's required in order to widen Route 1 and bring either a metro extension or some other mode of transit down Route 1. And we've been having discussions over the last 2 weeks to lock in that money, which I think we've finally done. We have a meeting coming up in about 2 weeks to agree on the complete parameters of that study. But getting that process started has been a 20 to 25 year ordeal that I think we're finally bringing to conclusion. But my part of the county also has, last weekend I put in a bill about car title lenders and payday lenders and check cashers and precious metal dealers. And I went out and counted on my 7-mile stretch of Route 1 how many of these guys there are. And then right now there are 11 car title lenders, payday lenders, precious metal dealers, or check cashers on a 7-mile stretch of road. That's about one every 3/4 of a mile or so. And from my point of view, we don't need to have that level of concentration. My part of the county has about, the 44th District has about 10% of the county's population and about 30% of its car title lenders and payday lenders. And I introduced legislation to give the Board of Supervisors the same authority that it has for pawn shops as it does for those types of businesses, to limit the number that can exist within a specific area. And I put that in. And I also have a bill. Another problem we have on Route 1 is there's a major litter problem. Over the past year, I did three creek cleanups on one creek, and we pulled 136 shopping carts out of the creek. 136, and there's still another 10 or 20 there. And I went back this weekend. There's 2 new ones, although I was happy to see once we got them out, actually beavers have now shown up when I went there this weekend. And I can't tell you how many thousands and thousands of bottles and cans and plastic bags. I took a 5-foot tall bulldozer tire out, which took us 3 men to lift out of the creek and then carry back to the truck. And I can't tell you how many car tires and bikes and bowling balls and all the trash. It's really incredible.
Right.
But I put in a bill also to allow Fairfax County to notify the owner of the cart. In this case, about half of them are Walmart, about a quarter are Home Depot. There's also Michael's, TJ Maxx, Shoppers Food Warehouse, Home Goods Store, PetSmart, Caldor. These are all the retailers we found. It would allow the county to notify them their carts are located in a creek, and if they don't remove them within 7 days, to bring an action against them to assess them for the costs of pulling the carts out. 5 years ago, the county spent thousands of dollars doing the same thing, pulling another couple hundred carts out of the creek, and they're all back there again after about 5 years. And so I'm hoping that I can give the county this tool to try and keep this creek clean and try and reduce the amount of litter.
I just want to interject that I am so happy that you put that bill in, because that is a serious problem. Litter and junk is a serious problem for the Bailey's Crossroads, Seven Corners area of my district, which has the same kind of higgledy-piggledy development.
Right.
And a number of citizens groups, and I'm sure in your district it's true too, have organized to clean up the roadside, but it's not easy. And there are a number of VDOT regulations that get in the way. I think that we need county action as well as citizen action as well as state. And an unsightly neighborhood does not encourage development.
No doubt. Delegate Keam, I know you're trying to clean up part of the code, so to speak, with some Freedom of Information Act legislation, because as I understand it, as a citizen of the Commonwealth, I'm allowed to make those kinds of requests. If I don't live here, I can't make those kinds of requests. Talk to us about that.
Well, sure, thank you. And ever since I first ran for office, and even before that in my public service career, I've always been focused on the idea that our government should be as open, accountable, transparent as possible. I mean, frankly, it's just a fact that we, the citizens, as taxpayers, pay for everything that the government does. So it's only fair and right that we find out what our taxpayer funding is doing for us, paying for certain things and such. And if there are particular services that require the government to take information about us as citizens and keep records, we certainly should have the right and the entitlement to be able to access that and get that information. Now, it's one thing if you're asking for information about yourself. There's all kinds of rules that allow for you to do that. But if you're asking for information that's related to you or your concerns, but you may not be the direct stakeholder in that, there are rules called the Freedom of Information Act that allow for certain categories of people to ask for certain kinds of records, and that's just in the process of making the government work better. Well, in the context of research and such, we've learned that in Virginia is one of the very few states in the country right now that doesn't allow for somebody who's not a citizen, meaning a person who lives outside of Virginia, to be able to ask for records in Virginia. And it's a bit of an anomaly. And back in the old days when we had horse and buggy, maybe it made sense because not many people outside of Virginia cared about the records that I have here. But for people that are transient, they move from here to there, for military or for other reasons, or they might have family members or other reasons. And for example, if you're an academic who wants to do some research on something that happened in Virginia, you ought to be able to get that information, especially nowadays with so much prevalent information online. You should be able to ask the agency to pass it along. There's a Supreme Court case as we speak in the United States Supreme Court that'll be heard in about a month or so that addresses this very statute that I put the language in for. So the U.S. Supreme Court will decide whether the Virginia statute that limits the access to people within Virginia versus outside, whether that would be constitutional or not under due process and equal protection and such. Regardless of which way the Supreme Court comes out, and obviously none of us have any idea which way they're going to come out, regardless of it, I think it raises a good question about why do we have this statute. And if it's outdated, if it's time for us to open it up to everybody, let's do that. So that's what my bill would do. And if the Supreme Court already tells us to do that, then we would be ready for that change in the law anyway. But I have a number of other bills that deal with FOIA. Every year I've put in some bills on open government and transparency. And my goal is to make what we do, and I know my friends Scott and Kate and I share the idea that we're public servants. So everything everything we do in the General Assembly is for everybody to know about. And so we all try to work our best to make sure that our constituents know what we're doing. And that's why what you're doing and the Cable Association is doing is so important, because you're bringing that sunshine and transparency to the work of the government as well.
Delegate Kory, tell us about your continued efforts to clean up what some people call a mess in terms of reproductive rights.
I would love to, but I also wanted to just
right
make
ahead.
a remark about something that you said, Mark, that prompted me to thank the Cable Association for their efforts to make connectivity available for low-income families, and for and to empathize with your frustration that you have not been able to use the school systems to disseminate that information. And I look forward to working with you to find a way to make people aware of the low prices that you are offering, so that their families can take advantage of all the information that's out there.
Likewise, thank you for that.
So, thank you.
Reproductive rights.
Reproductive rights, yes. I have the honor this year of being the chair of the House Women's Reproductive Health Care Caucus. And right now we are tracking all the bills that have to do with reproductive rights. There are many. There are at least 35 that have been introduced in the House. However, you might know that you haven't heard anything about them. And that is because there has been a concerted effort on the part of the majority party to push all the bills into one or two committees that are designed to kill them, and committees that only operate on late Friday afternoon, when there's no newspaper, there are very few constituents coming to testify. And I am disappointed in that head-in-the-sand attitude. I think that it's very, very important for us to look at what we legislated last year, the impediments that were put in place for a woman to receive an abortion. And we also have a number of healthcare clinic pieces of legislation that are really going to adversely impact them and pretty much force the healthcare clinics to close. Right now there are very few, and I know the one that is bordering my district is going to have to really struggle to meet the outrageous demands that have been put upon them by the legislature. And I would also like to say that yesterday was the 40th anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision. Yes. And I felt compelled to mention that on the floor, and I am compelled now to mention that I was very disappointed in a lot of the responsive speeches that were made. The legislature, we are here to govern. We're not here to legislate morality or one particular religious viewpoint. And those statements, the statements that were made in response to being reminded that it was the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, were all based on those convictions, moral convictions, religious convictions, and not health care and not good governance.
Speaking of health care, the Commonwealth is faced with a momentous decision this year as a result of the upholding of the Affordable Care Act, which gave states a lot more flexibility in terms of Medicaid expansion. What's happening on that front?
Unfortunately, nothing. But Delegate Kory and I, in addition to our districts being sort of similar demographically and politically, the Medicaid population in my seat is about 14%. I think in Kaye's district it's probably about 14 or 15%.
Yes.
You know, in the 44th district, there are 9,000 people who get their health care from Medicaid. 8,000 of those are children in the 44th. That's about 1 in 3 kids. If you meet a child from the 44th district, 1 in 3 of them currently is getting their health care from Medicaid. My district, the 44th, according to the maps I've seen, the zip codes that are contained within it, has the largest percentage, the highest percentage of what are called non-acuity emergency room visits in Fairfax County, meaning people using emergency rooms for primary health care purposes. the
Which
Medicaid
is very costly and inefficient.
it's very inefficient. It costs everybody a lot of money that we all end up paying through our own private health insurance premiums or otherwise. You know, the Medicaid expansion would be a huge help to folks in my district. It would help spread the cost of those people's health care across everybody instead of concentrating it on private insurance where it falls right now, because that's where the only place the system can make up the cost is. And it's insane to me that we're not doing anything about it. I mean, the federal government has agreed to pick up 100% of the cost, declining to like 90% of the cost about 10 years out. And they estimate that by expanding, if the state would take this federal money that they're offering to us, we could create 30,000 new jobs in Virginia. It's mind-boggling to me as to why we wouldn't take it. But the governor's indicated he has no interest in expanding Medicaid. And until he gives the green light, I don't see any legislation coming out of either the House or Senate doing that. And it's really a travesty, because this could have the ability to help benefit not just the people who need that health care, but it would also benefit people who have private health insurance, like myself. I own a business, a law firm that employs 30 people, and the health insurance premiums have been killing us. And a big part of that is all the uninsured costs out there. And this Medicaid, these folks that aren't covered by Medicaid, is the last piece of getting universal health care in this country, and for us not to take it, to me, is just indefensible.
Delegate Keam, what happens to those federal dollars collected from residents of the Commonwealth if Medicaid expansion does not occur?
Well, it'll go to the states that did accept that,
Okay.
and obviously there are only a finite number of taxpayer dollars that are out there, and if we don't take it, some other state will take it. It's a lot like the argument you hear in Northern Virginia, where we, even though we don't have the largest population base in Northern Virginia, we have the largest wealth base in terms of the income tax and the sales tax.
Right.
And so for every dollar that we in Northern Virginia send down to Richmond, a lot of that goes around to the rest of the Commonwealth and doesn't come back to us. Same concept here. If Virginia doesn't accept the contribution that we've already made by returning that federal dollars as Medicaid waivers for us and the payments for us, then those are going to go to the other states. And the sad thing, and again to my friend Scott's point, the sad thing here is I understand the philosophy. I understand the political decisions that people make in terms of for or against Obamacare, for or against the president's agenda. I get that. But the campaign is over. 2012 is a very clear election year. Americans overwhelmingly said President Obama is doing the right thing, and his accomplishments, including the Obamacare health care, was something that we should support. And the Supreme Court has also said this is legal and legitimate. So that debate is over. Now the question is, as we are governing in the Commonwealth of Virginia, what is in the best interest of our people, all of us? And for those who have absolutely no place to turn because they're uninsured or they can't afford private insurance, the only place they can turn to is Medicaid. And for us to be able to use politics and the past campaigns as a reason why we're blocking something from going forward, I think is a really a sad situation that we have in Virginia. So I really hope that the governor will reconsider that. And one thing that all of us as citizens can do beyond us as elected officials, everything that the citizens can also do is to weigh in and say, listen, this is important for our Commonwealth. And Governor McDonald, please reconsider your decision to deny this money that's coming in, because it's not a matter of being fiscally conservative. That money is going to go somewhere else.
Will it be a good thing for the Commonwealth to be known as the first state to do away with the gas tax? That's part of the governor's proposal.
Well, I'll tell you just a very quick reaction to that. And I serve on the Finance Committee, and we'll be seeing this bill. In fact, this afternoon we're going to start the conversation, and most likely next week we'll start the heavy lifting on this. And I've talked to the governor on a number of occasions, and I said, listen, I mean, I'd like to keep an open mind. There are plenty of things that we should be proud of Virginia being the first. We're one of the first, obviously, states, and we've produced more presidents, and there are lots of things that we do that's very good and very well. We have great schools. But when it comes to experimenting with our democracy, experimenting with our tax code, I don't think we should be the first here. The gas tax, regardless of whether it's a declining revenue source or not, the reality is it's the only dedicated stream of money that we have, guaranteed. And so as you and I go to the gas pump and we put in 17.5 cents every single gallon, that money is going to pay for maintenance and for construction. If we took that away and replaced it with a regressive state sales tax that says people don't even have cars and have to pay for the gas, I think that's a wrong shift. Now, I'm willing to consider everything on the table, but I think we have to be smart about what we do on transportation, because we are talking about money that's going to impact our lives.
Sure. Delegate Kory,
Right. Yes.
what about that sales tax? Supposedly it's going to make up the difference. All these people who will no longer pay a gas tax who are non-residents will make that up in our retail establishments.
I have to say that I believe that that is a myth. I do not agree with that. I know that around 30% of the traffic on our major highways is transversing the state. They are from outer state, and they would contribute through the gas tax to the maintenance of our roads, albeit it's not a lot, but it certainly is better than nothing. And by getting rid of the gas tax and raising the sales tax, you know, we are allowing them to use our roads for free and charging our citizens in order to let them use the roads for free. And I also think that charging hybrid car owners a higher registration fee because they don't use as much gas and don't pollute the air as much as a regular car does is a serious disincentive to being environmentally cautious and aware.
Doing the right thing.
And of course, to the extent that we don't want to rely upon the federal government for Medicaid expansion, apparently we're willing to bet that the Congress is going to pass a law which will allow the taxation of internet sales in the state, something that's been languishing there for about 10 years. And that's part of the governor's proposal as well.
Listen, there's so many problems with the governor's plan, I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, first of all, the long-term studies that have been done say that we need between $4 and $5 billion a year.
Right.
The governor's plan, I think, raises something like $750 million a year. So it gets to about 10 to 15% of what the need is. It's just another kick a can down the road because it's not nearly enough money. And the only way Route 1 is going to be widened or the Metro extended, the yellow, blue, orange lines extended, is with a lot more money than what the governor's put on the table. A third of his money is dependent on Congress doing this internet sales tax, which has been kicking around for 5 years. This hybrid fee, I mean, my hybrid right now gets 40 miles a gallon. The average car gets 23.8. I'm saving about $45 in gas taxes a year, and the governor wants me to pay an extra 100 for the 45 I'm not paying. That doesn't make any sense. He's leaving the tax on diesel, so if you do the right thing and buy an energy-efficient Jetta or Passat or Golf, you don't have to pay the gas tax because you use the same fuel as an 18-wheeler. I mean, we're not taxing out-of-state people is another problem with it. I mean, there's a million different things that are wrong with the plan. I mean, it's well-intentioned. I really appreciate the governor starting the discussion because it's a discussion that's 15 years overdue. But the thrust of this is really in a weird direction, and but I'm happy to talk about it. But I think Mark and Kaye are both right about the way the governor's having it and the means he's doing. I think there's other ways we ought to talk about raising money.
Well, there's a lot on your plates. We appreciate your public service. Thank you for being here today. Delegate Mark Keam, Delegate Kory, Delegate Scott Surovell. Thank you for your public service.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications. Until next time, I am Woody Evans.
Mm-hmm.